Hello, I'm Craig Constantine.
And I'm Fred Gutierrez.
Hi, Fred. As I say to everybody, because I
Hey,
really
Craig.
mean it, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. I am perennially excited to talk to people who are passionate about podcasting. And we do a little discussion beforehand. And we were talking about, you mentioned when I asked, you mentioned connection. And you started talking about audio as a medium and about how it's a single sense and how being able to focus on one sense lets you maybe tune out or dial in or focus on the topic itself. So my question, like first obvious question is, when you think about the connection in that sense, was that something that you were aware of when you started podcasting, or did you get into podcasting maybe as a consumer and then realize that it had that power of connection?
Yeah, I've always been drawn to sound as something that just felt I had more feeling with. It started with music. I always um, really gravitated to that over visual art. Even though I'm an architect and visual is very big, sound has always had much more of influence in terms of emotion on me. And I find probably because sound, when I was say live music, when I was kind of growing up and listening to live music, it was never edited or curated. You got it. You felt that personality from somebody because it was direct and there was no editing it. And I find that podcasting can be the same way, even though I do a little bit of editing. But I think as I
Right.
progress, I'm doing less and less editing because there's this little fear that like people hear things that you don't want them to hear. But I think it's the essence, it's the root that people find. And I think as long as you have good conversation, those things that I've been editing out can start to remain. So I don't know if that answers your
Yeah.
question a little bit. I mean, I
That
love sound. I mean, it's the pauses. It's
I
even when
would,
I can't find a word that means something.
yes, I agree. When you see somebody, hashtag watch Craig think, when you say something and then you see me like go, well, that's interesting. You, I think it was Carl Sagan said something like humans can work magic. And he was talking about writing and how, somebody who may be long dead has written down this idea. And then I perform some kind of incantation in my head with my eyes, and blam, like that idea from the author is there. So I've always felt that, yeah, there's a magic to audio. And I always wonder, because my shtick is conversational types of podcasts, and I've tried to do some host on mic, and I suck at it. I suspect if I worked at it, I could get better, but it's not my bag. And I'm wondering if what your thoughts are on, do you think it's easier, or I think it's harder to try and do the intimate direct audio that you were describing, to do that host on mic? Like, is it somehow easier when you have another person? I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on
Oh,
that.
it's so much easier when you have another person. I mean, the host on mic, I'm a wreck when I do that. I mean,
Yeah.
before I forget what I was thinking while you were talking, it's like sound gives you space, and I can't think of where else you can get space. So in writing, where is the space? And the same with say you're watching a movie or some sort of video. The space is coming from conversation. There's a connection there, and if there's silence, that's the space that we need to complete thoughts and to think. So in writing, I guess you can start and stop reading, and that's the space you have. So it's a controlled thing. But what was your
There's
question
a,
again? I jumped way.
no, I don't know. I was asking, the actual question I asked was about
Oh, whether it's easier
harder,
to work.
but I had to
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. When I do host on mic, what my host on mic is my intro and my outro. So I'll do my
Mm,
recording. I'll do a rough edit. I'll try to get it down, about 80% of what it was. I probably take out too many repeat words, and I try to get a little bit of space. I feel so I feel like I need to respect the listener's time. So I try to compress things, and I need to get a little past that. So I take a little bit of space out, not too much.
Hmm.
But my host on mic is my intro and my outro. And what I'll do is I'll sometimes write something and it just won't feel right.
Yeah,
So
I can't do it.
yeah.
I'm with you.
So I'll do it again and again, and I'll finally find something that I feel good about, but the rhythm, because I've edited it, doesn't feel right. So then I'll throw it into Descript, get a transcript of it, and then I'll act that out.
Hmm.
And that seems like a lot, but I guess it's an experience thing. I guess I'll get more and more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Oh, when you say it seems like a lot, my mind it jumped to that's where the magic happens. I'm a nut about quotes, right? But I think it was Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller
Mm-hmm.
said, like everyone, one will be fooled by magic if the magician is willing to spend more time, money, or energy than you or any rational person ever would, right? Like, so the magic is really in what went on behind the scenes. And
Okay.
when you're talking about like going around, I didn't enjoy it, I didn't like it, then I descripted it, then I got a script and I edited it. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm over here going, I need to up my game because it feels to me like since we know what we want to create and we know what the medium could be, lately I've been on this binge about talking about in the beginning, it's all about simplicity because you don't know. And then when you start to learn, then you're like, oh, this is complicated. And it's all about complexity and you overcomplicate everything. And then in the ultimate level, as you move toward mastery, then you have the informed simplicity idea. Perfection is achieved not when you've added everything, but when there's nothing left to take away, is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. So for me, the intros that I record for my bigger project, somebody else actually writes them, and it's like the bio and the intro for the guest, and the guest has that input, and I'm like afraid to touch it because I don't know. Maybe the ordering of these adjectives is super important to the person that I'm trying to show in the best light. So I turned into like this today on Movers Mindset. I turned into like it's like a head
Right.
forward NPR voice, and I don't want to say I hate NPR voice, but I hate when I do it because
Right.
I'd much rather love it to be an organic, natural thing. But, and maybe it's
and our
just,
audience is getting more comfortable with that. I think there's the maturation of the audience or listeners to start to accept. It's like the degradation of the quality of video on YouTube is
yeah,
okay now. People, it's the content now. So I think the same as with podcasts. I mean, you have to have a certain level of quality in terms of audio and listenability.
right. I had to be able to hear it.
But I think people are okay with these open-ended conversations.
I'm just thinking
But I
about
can go both ways.
Yeah. I mean, so some of the stuff I'm thinking of is, and I'm going to apologize. If anybody listening has never heard of this podcast, I'm sorry. This is going to waste a lot of your time. There's a podcast called Memory Palace by Nate DiMeo, and hundreds of episodes.
I can't imagine how much time he spends on that.
Oh my gosh. I started, somebody said Memory Palace, and I'm like, what's that? And I like wandered in and listened to a recent episode, and I'm like, whoa. I went back, episode 1. I'm like working my way through. And what I really want to know, I probably should just email the guy. What I really want to know is how many takes, like what is the actual time it takes for him to do it? Because I think I would be duly impressed if I found out that he spent days writing and wordsmithing and working on it and then dropped it in one take. Like that would be like really impressive. Because I feel like it would be one, I don't want to say cheating, but like it only takes me 500 takes and I just do it over and over and over and over. And eventually I happen to get it right. Versus like, no, I really know what I'm trying to achieve. And I know like you mentioned, I put in the script, I get the script, I edit this. Like to me, that's like, yeah, you have a process there. Like, that if I do this, looks like a Rube Goldberg, but if I do all these pieces in the end, then I can simply, it looks like press record. All I have to do now is, physically create this thing that I have perfectly, the model that I've built. So yeah, with every one of these conversations, I go, oh, I really should do everything better, differently, more. But I think that's just the mastery drive. Like when you find something that is complicated enough to pique your interest, it just draws you in.
Right. Have you seen any of these live recordings of podcasts?
I haven't. I mean, I know of the thing,
So
and
I
I've
know
seen
there's
people talk
been a
about
couple
it.
that's come through Boston, and long ago, Ira Glass came and he was going to do one, and for some reason I couldn't go, and maybe that's a good thing that I couldn't go because I couldn't see the magic behind the audio.
Hmm.
But I was impressed to think that, oh, you can do this kind of in one take.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it takes a lot of planning to do that. So it's really not one take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, what?
So
Well, just because we only
it's a
spent
performance at
one
that point.
between
Yeah.
record and stop doesn't mean that there wasn't huge amounts of effort put in beforehand and
Right.
in post production. Like I know, like This American Life does a ton of, they effectively storyboard it, and people come
Right.
in and with like, here's my rough cut of the episode. Here's what I think it could be, and they
Right.
actually like, have
Right.
dueling. What's the story? And
Right.
um,
But the
so
podcast that I've had the most impact on me was Krista Tippett's On Being, but her unedited cut. It's what I would always listen to versus the edited cut, and I felt there was just so much more in that unedited cut.
see, I have to get off my
To me,
lazy.
feeling the space of like getting to know each other for the very first time, like just that introduction and hearing them, the mic check, and just that conversation about setting the sound settings.
Yeah.
It builds this relationship between the two that you can pick up, and it influences how they communicate all the way through the conversation. And I don't know, maybe it's the voyeur in me, or there's something about it that there's just a lot of meaning there and a lot of humanity that we take away from people, or you just don't see. So I like that, and I'm hoping that comes through in some of my audio. That's what I aspire to, is the humanity there.
I think that's a wonderful, like if one person listens to one podcast and gets what you've gotten from Krista Tippett's interviews, that's like, yes, please, more of that. I don't want to say there's so many crappy podcasts because I don't listen to those, but there are so many millions of shows. I've said before, we don't need another episode of anything that I'm making. So why am I doing? And I have very specific reasons. And I check in with myself regularly to be like, yep, still want to keep doing that. Or I finish one and I'm like, that was awesome. Glad I did that one,
Right.
So I just think it's the more that you become steeped, you become it's like watching people listen to classical music. They're like, oh, this is my favorite symphony, but not the recording from this. And I'm just like, huh? But you start to understand that once you listen to a podcast and you're just like, that one wasn't, no, there was something. And you listen to another one, you're like, oh, that was, yes. And I just think that, to me, makes me a better person because it develops I'm air quoting, my ear for understanding other people through listening. So
yeah, my current guilty pleasure is I've been watching these YouTube reaction videos where you watch somebody play, Comfortably Numb. They're listening to it for the first time, and you can see through them that impact, and it connects you with that person because you know what they're feeling. It's just I mean, I'm a strange guy, but I just love seeing that impact on people. I don't know what that is. And
to me, it sounds like empathy and compassion is what that sounds like. That could just be my 2 cents. I do remember once seeing a reaction video, although I don't know that I would have labeled it as that until just now that you said it. Some father was showing his young children the Star Wars movies, and he gets to the reveal, and there's even a thing now called like machete order, which is now that all the movies are out, if you watch them in numerical order, the reveal, when Luke finds out that, spoiler alert, right, Darth is his dad, finds out about Vader is his father. If you watch 1 through 3, like, there's no surprise. So you have to watch them in a different order so that the reveal works. And he's got this video of his 2 young kids, they're probably 7 and 9, 2 young boys. And he's videoing them as they're watching it. And he's like, I'm your father. And the kids are like, wow, they just their heads explode, and you go, yeah, I had forgotten what it was like because you had that moment too. I mean, slightly different magnitudes.
Right.
It's a great
Well,
point
isn't it
about
sad?
watching.
Like, I mean, it's sad. Like now they've got videos of people unboxing things from Amazon, right?
Yeah,
Like there's this
right.
one builder that opens up his UPS boxes in front of the video camera, and there's some strange commodification there. So I guess it can go in kind of a negative way too.
I, I
But
refer to the UPS guy as the brown Santa Claus.
true, but I mean, there's this, yeah, this. I guess there's this dopamine hit that's happening when you experience
Yeah,
something for the first time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I do like your, I mean, first of all, like Fred sitting in front of not just one, but two walls of books, which is both A, brilliant, and B, a wonderful sound deadening strategy. I'm in an echo box at the moment. I'm not in my usual room. And you mentioned earlier that you're an architect. And my mind immediately jumped to, I wonder how much sound, I'm going to say sound design. I don't mean it in the way that you design
Mm-hmm.
sound for a theater production, but I wonder how much consideration of acoustics plays into architecture. I mean, it's got to play in if you're making a movie theater, duh, of course it plays in. But I'm just wondering, have you had any projects where, where your penchant for sound actually was like, ooh, I get to exercise that on this project?
Well, usually it's solving sound problems. We get a lot of those. So I'm not a practicing architect now. What I do is I'm a homeowner's coach. So I coach people through the psychological or
You can take
or the
this wall out,
experience,
right?
and that's what my podcast is. It's about this experience of building something that touches humanity, and that's my interest now. But I've gone through a career as an architect and as a builder. And acoustics is always often overlooked unless you know that it's going to be a problem. But there's so much. I mean, I always have this dream of building like the perfect bar or the perfect restaurant because I think this acoustics in those spaces is more important than anything else. That ability to be with somebody but be in public. And
Yeah.
acoustics can influence that dramatically, or it can make it a horrible experience.
I'm thinking of, there was a restaurant with a humongous bar near me, and everything about the place was awesome. You know what I'm going to say, right? The food was awesome. The bar was
Yeah.
awesome. The bartender, the people, the whole thing was great, but it was basically in like a warehouse. It was a strip mall, and it was just open girder ceilings to the sheet metal underneath. And I'm like, for a couple of $1,000, you can get those acoustic wedge tiles and just dangle those things.
Yeah.
Nobody would notice them. They're up there in the
Yeah.
shadows, and it would change the whole room. That's before I'm thinking, that's long before I was into podcasting. I wonder.
Well, I visited a bar in Northern Ireland, and in it, they had your typical Irish bar, but in it they had little booths that were separate rooms. Like they were like little dog houses inside, and you could actually go in and you'd be in another space just inside. I thought that was really interesting.
Cool. What was the name? We didn't do that. What was the name of your show?
It's Homeowners Institute.
Definitely want people to check that out.
Only a year in, but I mean, it's been a fantastic experience putting those things together. I mean, I've learned so much about myself, and I've taught myself a lot. It's really a vehicle. You know that podcasting is this tool that we do in our midlife crisis.
Yes.
You're much younger than me, but that allows us to realize that, hey, we can still learn a lot. And that's what it's been for me.
Cool. Well, I always make the joke, this is a quarter-mile drag race, and I think that's a wonderful place to stop talking about self-improvement and growth. Fred, thanks, as I said before, for taking time to sit down and chat with me today.
This has been fantastic. It was a nice conversation. I'm curious about the edit.
Oh, there's no editing.
I know, exactly. So that's why I'm super curious.
Yeah.
This will be the test that I need to hear, because in my mind right now, I'm like, oh, I could do some editing to this, but
I'll tell you what,
We'll
Normally I would
see.
have let you have the last word, but the behind the scenes part of this is it takes me 4 minutes from when we press stop to when I have the whole thing published and completely done. And if you want, I'll send you the WAV files and you could make your own version of the episode and see what it comes out with if you work on it.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Anyway, I like to I always hate to ruin the moments at the end, but as I said, it was a pleasure. And I hope we get a chance to talk again in the future and maybe work on something together. So thanks.
Great to be here today. Thanks for doing what you do.